back at Oak Hill Cemetery, and I'm excited to be delivering to you a new installment on my series, Epic Stories of Oak Hill. So come along and join me. I've got a lot of great stories to tell you today, and even they agree. In this Epic Stories of Oak Hill Cemetery series, I began with the intention of including in each segment profiles of people featured in the book called A Biographical Review of Calhoun County. Now, this was published by Hobart and Mather from Chicago in 1904. In this installment, I'll be including 3 stories from that collection and also others outside of this book that I discovered in my exploration of this wonderful outdoor museum known as Oak Hill Cemetery. Let's begin with the 3 biographical entries published in 1904. The first stop is the grave of Charles Merritt, a man regarded by many who knew him as a champion of liberty, an opponent of oppression, an advocate of human rights, and a contestant against injustice and wrong. He was also regarded as one of the most enterprising and successful neighbors from the early pioneer settlement years of Battle Creek history. From his earliest childhood, he was raised as a Quaker by his parents, Joseph and Phoebe Merritt. Charles was born in Saratoga County, New York, on October 14th, 1820. His father was a farmer, and he was a member of a large family of 9 children. Joseph Merritt was a very productive farmer and was quite successful in New York. However, he felt constrained by the availability of land in that state. He had 7 sons, and he wanted to be able to acquire more land and then leave them an inheritance. He made his way to Michigan, traveling with 6 of his sons and his wife, settling in Battle Creek in 1835. His other son, William, had come in advance as an agent of his father and acquired land on his behalf. They purchased one whole section within the present confines of Battle Creek on the north side of the city, just north of the present-day YMCA, consisting of several hundred acres. As per the 1858 Atlas of Battle Creek, you can see here the parcels owned by the Merritt family members in this area of the city in the days before they became residential neighborhoods. Their first home was built on the corner of present-day Orchard Avenue and Maple, today known as Capitol Avenue Northeast. Joseph continued to live in that house and engage in farming until his death in 1863. Although when Joseph Merritt came to Battle Creek, he lived mostly as a retired farmer, leaving the work to his sons, and he took an interest in the active questions of the day related to slavery in the country. His home was a frequent stopping place for speakers on abolition. Such figures as William Lloyd Garrison, Wendell Phillips, Parker Pillsbury, Henry C. Wright, Lucy Stone, and Sojourner Truth were frequent visitors to the Merritt household. Although Joseph Merritt never took the platform himself and spoke about the abolition of slavery openly, he nevertheless exerted a quiet and strong influence in that direction by making his home available for the cause. Joseph, along with his brothers Adam and Isaac, and his brother-in-law Jonathan Hart, built the Quaker meeting house that once stood where the present-day Catholic Church now resides. Charles Merritt was a youth at 15 years old when his father moved the family all the way to Michigan. He had received a good education in the East and attended a Society of Friends school there. A little later, after his arrival in Battle Creek, he went to live with his uncle in Spring Valley, Ohio, where he learned the woolen manufacturing business. Later, he engaged with his brother in this business in Ohio under the name Merritt Brothers. In June of 1857, Charles had married Elizabeth Margaret Chandler from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. However, feeling that his duties were to return to Battle Creek and help his parents, Charles returned to the city to care for them. They were in advanced years at that point, and when he returned, he took over the management of his father's estate. He still retained an interest in the mill in Ohio until 1865, which later the mill moved to Indianapolis. Joseph Merritt not only had tracts of land in Battle Creek, but also owned land in Homer, where a mill was located, as well as other property in Bellevue. Charles became one of the premier fruit growers in this part of the state, and it's said he demonstrated such success in this that it inspired others to see this part of the state as a resource for orchards during this time. Michigan has since become one of the most productive fruit-growing states in the country. Charles made a specialty of the cultivation of peaches and strawberries, having large orchards and beds of crops. He also made great success with Lawton blackberries, and he was largely considered to be an authority on the subject of their cultivation. He wrote many valuable articles during his time for leading horticultural journals across the country, including articles on strawberry cultivation as well. Charles Merritt continued in this line until the expansion of the city brought his land into the city market, and the old orchards and gardens were subdivided into plats and divided into lots, forming Merritt's first, second, third, and fourth additions to the city. Orchard Place, a beautiful residential street today, went through the old orchard that once gave him notoriety on his property. Overall, Charles Merritt was considered a very honest businessman. He would rather have cheated himself in a business transaction than to ever do so to others. He passed away on April 7th, 1893, at the age of 72. His wife continued to manage the family estate, selling the lots in Merritt's addition after his passing. A letter was written to his wife by a prominent businessman in the community after the passing of Charles. He wrote, "Charles had a broad, kindly nature, a loving and generous disposition. He was gentle. In addition to that, he was thoughtful, and he not only thought good things, but what is better, he did them. Your children will be better for having such a father, you for having such a husband, others for having such a friendship. He was so entirely frank and honest that one only needed to meet him to realize he knew a good man." Our next stop is the grave of Howard Hazley Batdorf. Howard Batdorf was born May 30th, 1870 in Fulton County, Ohio. His father was a minister who traveled around the country, settling in various places with the ministry with the United Brethren Church. When Howard was 16 years old, his parents moved to Michigan, settling first near Charlotte and later in Bedford Township on a 150-acre farm. Howard attended high school in Charlotte. After he completed high school, he began clerking in a grocery store nights and mornings and on weekends in order to pay expenses to continue his schooling. He received a teacher's certificate, but never followed that profession. Instead, he began learning the carpenter's trade. He had previously worked at barn building and was able to use this knowledge to enter into an apprenticeship for room and board. After 2 years, he eventually moved to Battle Creek and was hired as a foreman, continuing in the carpentry trade. About 1898, he began reading law books. He soon acquired quite a library of law books, which became a great assistance to him in later years. In March of 1890, he married Miss Dora Harrison. Her father was a distant relative of the two presidents by that name. Together, they had a son named Lester. Howard would later go on to serve the community as the Justice of the Peace and own stock in a flour and cereal company. Over the years, he tried many cases in Battle Creek and served the community well. He remained a fraternal member of the Carpenters Union and the Knights of the Maccabees. He ran for county clerk in 1906 and was elected. He ran for Secretary of State in 1914 for the Progressive Party, an independent party that year supporting Theodore Roosevelt, and he was unsuccessful in winning the election. In 1922, he ran on the Republican primary for state representative in District 2, but lost to Earl Missioner. He passed away in January of 1928 at the age of 57. His wife, Dora, passed away in 1936 at the age of 67. The next grave we're going to visit is Lynn Macomber. He was the son of Zedebee Macomber. Zedebee was a successful farmer in Battle Creek with a 90-acre farm in Emmett Township, who was originally from Ohio. He bought the first steam threshing machine used in this part of Michigan. It was a Columbus engine Nichols and Shepard separator, and in 1873 he had the old engine converted into a traction engine. also the first of its kind in Michigan. Zebedee married Clara Wright in 1879, and one of their children was Lynn Macomber, born October 8, 1865. During his childhood, his parents moved to Calhoun County and settled on the farm. He worked on the farm with his father until he was 22 years old, and during those years growing up, he became an expert using the steam thresher. He then entered the employ of the Advanced Thresher Company at Battle Creek, and as a result of his close application and capability with the equipment, he quickly became their traveling expert machinist. He continued working with Advanced Thresher until 1898, when he purchased a small coal and ice business on Gogwak Lake. This he continued to operate for 3 years until he organized the Consumers Coal and Ice Company, which he built up to be able to handle 2 train carloads per hour, a capability of 50 tons of coal. In 1903, he sold his interest in this company to invest in a new venture. His new company, which he was the sole owner, was the Battle Creek Lithia Water Company. In 1898, he had discovered a spring about 80 miles west of Battle Creek, which had water that excelled all others in the U.S. at the time in terms of purity. It took him several years to acquire the land, and when he did so, he established this company selling mineral water. The Battle Creek Lithia Water Company also manufactured carbonated water in this facility as well. He married Miss Maude Decker in 1900, and together they had 4 children. Prior to her marriage, Maude taught public school in Battle Creek, and she was also a talented singer. For many years, she was the president of the Morning Musical Club. Mrs. Macomber's singing career developed when she joined the choir at the First Congregational Church, where she remained for 13 years. She also sang in various local shows at the Hamblin Opera House and was a charter member of the First Congregational Church, and at one time served on the board of the YMCA. She was active also in the Battle Creek Women's Club. Lynn Macomber passed away in December of 1944 at the age of 79. Maude Macomber passed away in 1961 at the age of 88. We continue this journey by looking at the headstone of a man whom has an intriguing representation to his legacy. I came across this grave during one of my explorations at Oak Hill Cemetery. His name was Dr. Alonzo McBeth. You may notice that there is a distinct horse etched into this marker. This was selected by his wife when he passed away to honor both his love for horses and his legacy as a veterinarian. He was born on a farm in Brantford in the province of Ontario in 1864. He became educated in the common schools of Ontario as a young man and attended the Ontario Veterinary College, where he graduated with honor with a degree in veterinary science in March of 1889. Soon after his graduation, he moved to Battle Creek and set up a veterinary practice and became a partner in a livery business. He long had a love for horses, which would play an important role to him later in life. He married Josephine Howard in April of 1904, and he was elected as an alderman twice in the city of Battle Creek. He became a breeder of racehorses, and this was during a time that Battle Creek had a racing track. You can see a rendering of the old horse racetrack on this bird's eye view map from 1880. It would have been located roughly where the Ford dealership is today, off Dickman Road. Dr. McBeth had an international investment as well. He was the president of the Antigua Mining Company in Chihuahua, Mexico, and his stock was rapidly growing. Mining investors of the day believed he was fast on his way to wealth within a few years. Unfortunately, he was never able to see the fruits of this energy on this project, as he was just 44 years old when he died in 1908 from a stroke. He was fondly remembered as a caring veterinarian within the city and an active member of the community. The next story I want to share with you takes us back to the early days of Battle Creek and we're going to look at the life of a man named Homer Marsh, who passed away on March 20th, 1858. His grave marker is quite unique, with Masonic markings on the stone. Although there is not a lot of information on him available, I did uncover a snapshot of his life in his obituary, as well as an insight into some of the customs and ceremonies of early Battle Creek. His funeral service was held at the Presbyterian Church, as it was the largest church in the city at the time, and it was filled to capacity on the day of his ceremony. Homer had been the chief engineer at the fire department at the time of his death. Among the attendees at his funeral procession from the church to Oak Hill Cemetery were members of that organization who marched in honor of his service. During this time in the city's history, participation in the fire department was mainly on a volunteer basis. Homer was deeply respected for his contributions to the city in this capacity. He had been a resident of Battle Creek for many years. He was described as being a man of high intellect, much above the ordinary grade, refined tastes, and fine sensibilities, of sparkling wit, mingled with great kindness of spirit, and an active, courageous, adventurous temperament, as well as a great companion. He passed away following being ill for several weeks. He was an active member of the Masonic Lodge, and it was stated in the Battle Creek Journal on April 2nd, 1858, the following: "The Masons in regalia followed him to the grave and observed the usual ceremonies of their order on such occasions. These ceremonies consist in an exhortation to the living to prepare for death, the dropping of a Masonic apron on the grave by the master, the dropping of a little branch of evergreen by each member of the order in the grave as an emblem of immortality, and the performance of an exercise called the Grand Honors, designed to illustrate their resignation to the will of God, the pain which they as brothers suffer in loss, and their faith in his transition to the regions of the blessed high." Our final stop on this tour is the historic Oak Hill Chapel. Easily the most fascinating and charming building at the cemetery, the chapel was commissioned in 1924, and it was designed by Battle Creek architect Louis J. Sarvis. Construction began on the structure in 1926. The building is an English Gothic style, with the exterior facing of Massachusetts granite and Indiana limestone around the windows and entrance. The dimensions are 55 feet by 25 feet, and inside the walls are sanded plaster with walnut trim. Gracing the interior walls are beautiful stained glass windows handmade by Francois Grenier of the Beaux Arts Studio in Detroit, and they were donated by families in memory of their loved ones buried at Oak Hill Cemetery. The building has faced many challenges over the years, from deterioration to vandalism. The chapel had a restoration completed in 1990 to restore the interior, and it was rededicated at that time. Since then, there have been problems with the roof that have developed, and it's again in need of restoration. Recently, an effort has been launched to restore the building to its former glory and make this building available again for use by the public. The Oak Hill Chapel restoration project is underway, but the success of the project depends on contributions from the public. If you would like to donate to support this incredible restoration effort, please look for the link in the description of this video to make your contributions. Together, we can bring this beautiful building back to its former glory and allow it to be used to "Comfort ye my people," as the sign reads over the entry door. That's going to conclude today's journey through history, looking at epic stories of Oak Hill Cemetery. If you'd like today's video, please be sure to hit the like button down there, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with others. And until next time, when we take another journey into yesterday, thanks for watching.